Then what did you do, Ronaldo?
Didn't have much choice. One of us had to get out of the bathtub.
That must have been pretty embarrassing.
It was. It was. We hadn't even been introduced.
That's ridiculous. Who ever heard of a horse in a bathtub?
At least it was a clean joke.
I think we better go, Ronaldo.
Mr. Marvin. Mr. Marvin. Mr. Marvin, there are some very excellent customers that would like to...
Marcel?
Come in, Mr. Gunn. Close the door, please. I hope you can help me, Mr. Gunn.
I hope so.
You see, I have quite of a problem.
Everybody has.
Everybody is not about to be arrested for murder. You have heard of the marvelous Marvin.
The ventriloquist who was killed?
Yes.
What about him?
I have no quarrel with his death. It was deserved. It is the time that was inappropriate.
How's that?
Monsieur, I planned to kill him.
Planned?
Only planned. I moved too slow. It appears someone, how do you say, beat me to it.
Which brings us to the next question.
I know. Why? Monsieur, it goes back to France. 2 years ago, two people, a dance team, Colette and Marcel. She was lovely, monsieur. The movements, the grace of one born to dance.
You sound like a man in love.
I was, monsieur. She was my wife. There was no reasoning with her. She fell in love with him. Just like that. She fell in love with him. I went to Marvin, tried to reason with him. There was a fight on the balcony of his room. I do not fight well, Mr. Gunn. I was knocked against the railing, fell over 2 stories. It was worse for her. She went away with him. He left her after only a few months.
She came back to you?
No, monsieur, she killed herself.
I'm sorry.
I followed him from Europe. When I learned he was going to play in this town, I took a job here to teach the dance.
Marcel, operating under the assumption that you did not kill him, why do you want to hire me?
Monsieur, eventually the police must come. They will learn my motive. Once they arrest me, they will look no more. Monsieur, I need time. I need the real killer caught before the police find me.
One thing bothers. From dancer to instructor. Why? You're still a young man.
Why? When I fell from the balcony, there was no more dancing.
I'm sorry, Mr. Gunn. I don't think...
Very simple question. How long did Marvin work here?
Mr. Gunn.
You seem a little reticent.
It isn't that.
Then I'll just take a look in the dress.
I don't think you can do so.
I think I can manage.
If you have smeared one fingerprint on that door, I will personally get you 23 years.
Sorry.
You've apologized. You can go now. To what are we indebted?
I was just in the neighborhood.
That's nice. This may bore you. We're just trying to solve a murder.
Really? How's it going?
If he lifts one more set of prints, we're going to have a bigger file than the FBI.
You going to tell jokes or solve the murder?
We may be a little while.
Problem?
A little bit. Very tricky ventriloquist. No dummy.
Maybe he forgot to keep up his payments.
Well, you've helped just about as much as you can. Thank you very much, and good night.
Are you trying to tell me that somebody killed him to get the dummy?
Well, it could be if there was something valuable in the dummy.
Like?
Dope, jewels, you name it.
Well, he was a pretty well-known ventriloquist. Do you think he went in for smuggling?
Don't knock it. He did a lot of traveling throughout Europe. Besides, he was pretty weird. The manager said he had to knock out a whole wall here. He said Marvin demanded an outside entrance to his dressing room.
Liked his privacy, huh?
He's got plenty of it now. You want to tell me?
What?
Your interest?
I have a client.
Care to tell me who?
No.
That's too bad, because if your client has an interest in this killing, we're probably going to be very interested in your client.
Well, that's usually the way it winds up, isn't it?
It's a mistake not checking signals, Pete. If you try to block me, I'll run over you just as fast as anybody else.
I'll see you around, Lieutenant.
Yeah.
This help?
I don't like handouts, Pete. On the other hand, I'm not proud.
Artie, tell me about Marvin.
Well, what's there to tell? Standard act, worked all the time, except this year, of course.
What do you mean?
Well, I read something in the papers about, he went off the circuit for about 3 months. He stopped to count his money, I guess.
When did this happen?
First of the year.
Did you ever hear of a dance team called Colette and Marcel?
Yeah, I heard of them. Marvin was pretty familiar with them, and too familiar.
Would you say Marcel had reason to kill him?
He had the oldest and best reason in the world, Eddie.
Yeah, I know. He told me.
You mean Marcel's your client?
Maybe.
I got a cue coming up here. Imagine 6 shows a day. 6 a day. You know, there's a line about the show must go on, but funny, I can't think of it right now.
It's like finding a piece of real estate in California. After you got there, you didn't like it. You couldn't find it. I was so high up in the air, the usher only took me halfway, and he says, "You'll have to go the rest way alone, mister, if I go any higher, my nosebleeds." From where I sat, the show was just a rumor. You wouldn't have liked it anyway.
Hello, Artie.
Hey, Lieutenant. Am I under suspicion or something?
No crime against jokes.
Oh, you haven't seen my act.
Dorman tells me that Peter Gunn was here.
Yeah, we exchanged material.
What did he want?
Company.
I always wanted to do this. Of course, we don't have the budget that Gunn has. What did you talk about, Artie? Don't bother to knock.
All right, what's the idea?
All right, the idea is that your client was a principal suspect. You knew it, and still you wouldn't open up.
Oh, come on, Lieutenant. You haven't got the evidence to prove it.
We're working on it. Meanwhile, it gives us a sense of security to know that he's safely tucked away for the night.
In a jail cell.
That's where suspects usually end up.
Innocent or guilty?
Pete, you know better than that. If he's innocent, he'll be released.
I suppose I need a writ to see him.
And you know better than that.
Sorry, Lieutenant. Guess I got a little hot.
It's the steam heat. Pete,
Hmm?
what's the going price on information?
What kind of information?
What did you pay Artie?
$20.
Would you believe it?
What?
He held me up for 25. About that evidence, Pete. We don't need it. Looks like a long session.
I just had a discouraging thought. If Marcel's prints don't match anything you found in Marvin's dressing room, you might have arrested the wrong man.
The wrong man usually doesn't hang himself.
Well, he might, if he was terribly frightened. Figured he didn't have a chance.
Look, Pete, we've got a hard enough job as it is.
Yeah, I know your job. You had a suspect. You had to pick him up. We're just speculating.
Well, don't speculate on my time.
Well, you let me know how you come out, huh?
Where are you going?
I don't think you're going to match those prints.
Look down that lonesome road before you travel on. Look up and seek your maker. For Gabriel blows his horn. I'm so weary, toting such a load, trudging down that long and lonesome road. Look down that lonesome road before you travel on. Before you travel on.
What's the matter? You run out of dimes? We're finally off the phone. For a while there, I didn't know whether to follow the beat or the phone clicks.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to find someone.
Is she pretty?
You won't believe this, but I'm trying to locate a dummy.
I won't say it.
A ventriloquist dummy.
When do you open?
You don't seem to understand.
What's to understand? Business is bad, you're going to be a ventriloquist.
You know what?
What?
I'm sorry we got into this.
8 to 5, your lips move.
I'll take it. I gotta go.
Oh?
Gotta take a little trip. See a man that makes a particular type of dummy.
What's that going to do for you?
Well, if he made one for the marvelous Marvin, it might solve a murder.
I'd rather talk about your trip. I love long goodbyes.
Well, I tell you what, when I get settled, I'll send for you.
Well, you know what? My bag is always packed.
Lovely little fellow, no, Mr. Gunn? Lovely.
For a dummy, lovely, Mr. Elry.
No, Herman. Close your mouth. How many times I tell you it's not polite?
You call him Herman?
He is Herman. They're all Herman. What should I call them? Pinocchio?
Well, hardly.
Herman. They're all Herman until the papa comes to take them away. Then the name is the papa's problem.
The papas? Oh, you mean the ventriloquist?
Yeah, that's what I said.
Well, about your little orphanage.
No, it's not an orphanage. They all have got a grandpa.
Well, let's put it this way. I understand you're tops in your business.
No discounts, please.
Was the marvelous Marvin ever a customer of yours?
Please, not in front of the child.
Then you knew him.
Oh, how could I forget? He was the only man who ever cheated me.
How's that?
For years, he's my customer. Then, at the end of last year, he orders a Herman. Beautiful. I made it so beautiful. Look. Excuse me, Herman. Come on, Herman. Wake up. Oh, good boy. Masterpiece. No. This Herman makes all the other Hermans look like fritzels. No?
Well, I guess it's all in the way you look at it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if he ordered it, why is it still here?
He called me. Canceled. Told me not to deliver. He changed his mind. After I had made it. Did you ever?
Where were you supposed to deliver the dummy?
Oh,
Oh, I mean the hermit.
Look, I have his address here someplace. Just a moment. Oh, here, yeah. Here it is. 515 Loring Place. That's in Westgate.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ulrich.
Oh, I didn't ask. You are a policeman, maybe?
Maybe.
Good. Then whatever he did, you sent him to jail. I call it even.
Oh, those poor dear boys. Honestly, I don't believe we'll ever make our quota. Honestly. $500,000. You know, that's a lot of money, Mr. Gunn.
War relief, Mrs. Henderson?
Oh, now, don't be gauche. The Artists League of Greenwich. You know, impressionistic. It's the only true art form.
Really? What's the trouble?
Trouble? They're on strike.
Against whom?
They don't seem to know. Oh, we've gone right past. It's so hard to recognize it from the rear. You know, I didn't want to bring you up the front and upset the other tenants. Poor Mr. Marvin murdered. I don't know what the owner's going to say. Another vacancy at this time of year. You know, this is not one of our more elegant units. Of course, I explained that to Mr. Marvin. But the apartment he had on the front was infinitely nicer than this.
The apartment he had on the front?
Can you imagine anyone sacrificing 2 lovely rooms just so he could have that private rear entrance? It's ridiculous.
He seems to have made a point of that.
The only reason he moved.
Mrs. Henderson, do you know where he kept his working equipment? You know, costumes, dummies, things like that?
You mean the things he didn't destroy?
Destroying?
Well, it was around the first of the year. He must have been having a terrible time. Because I remember he locked himself in his room. And he told the houseman to destroy his working equipment. You know, costumes, dummies. I thought he was going to retire. I was amazed when I heard he'd gone back to work.
This prescription indicates that he was ill last January. Do you know what was the matter with him?
Now, how could I know? He wouldn't let anyone near him.
Mrs. Henderson, are you sure you didn't see any visitors or friends?
Never.
Well, there must be some excuse for that private entrance.
Well, after all, some gentlemen have.
Well, Mrs. Henderson, you live just a floor below. Now, you must have heard something.
Darling, you don't hear things if you're not listening. Although what I heard last night was very odd.
Last night?
Well, after all, it was impossible. He was dead.
Mrs. Henderson.
Well, it was early this morning. I don't remember what time, but I woke up. I thought I heard someone walking upstairs. Then I knew it was very unlikely. Mr. Marvin was on tour. So I went back to sleep.
Well, Mrs. Henderson, would you mind if I borrowed that key for a little while?
Oh, I'm sorry. I couldn't do that.
Well, that artist strike might last a long time.
Well, of course, if you put it this way, when I think of those poor dear bunnies, how can I resist?
Yes, I prescribed that for Mr. Marvin. What is it, Mr. Gunn? My telephone answering service told me it was urgent.
Well, I'm sorry to bother you this late, Doctor, but it's important. I wonder if you could tell me the nature of his ailment.
Well, I performed a very delicate operation on his throat.
A throat operation for a ventriloquist. Well, it's a good thing it was successful.
Well, that's the amazing thing about it, Mr. Gunn. Frankly, I'm surprised to see him go back to work. You see, I considered the operation unsuccessful. He could never speak again.
Well, thank you, Doctor. Forget something? Wasn't killing him enough? You have to come back to rob him? Don't bother.
Whatever I take, he owed me.
Marvin had quite an act. A real live dummy.
Act? I was the act. He couldn't throw his voice half an inch.
After the operation.
I was the one people paid to see. I got all the laughs. What did I get out of it? $90 a week. $1,000 for him. Peanuts for me. You want to know something?
Is everything all right?
Neat trick.
Trick? It's an art. It takes years. You gotta study. You gotta listen. I heard your voice 15 seconds. I could do a whole routine with it. I'm the best ventriloquist in the world.
Is that right?
But who ever heard of a 4-foot-high ventriloquist?
Why did you kill him?
At $90. I begged him to give me more. Make me feel like a man. He just laughed. Said, "You're a little fella, so you get a little piece of the check." And he laughed. He was always laughing at me. I stood it all I could. I bought a gun. I killed him. This is why I come back. He had lots of stuff I could pawn. Needed to live, to eat.
Yeah. Well, I don't think you'll have to worry about that anymore.
You gonna take me in? Police? All right. A guy like me is gonna make big headlines.
Yeah. Big.